Welcome back to Studio F, where on Fast Times with Willy B, we'll be reviewing MaXXXine. Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Hit it, Russell!
Welcome back to Fast Times with Willy B. I'm Willy B. I got Mo back. Mo, long time no see. How we doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good. So, second video of the week.
I know. Didn't expect to see me back so soon, huh?
Oh, good to have you back.
I'm happy to be here for an incredible film we just saw.
For sure. It's always a pleasure having you. So today we'll be reviewing MaXXXine, the conclusion to the Ty West X trilogy. This movie concludes... we had X start this one back in 2022. Pearl came out later that year. And then, we had to wait a couple years for this one, but we finally got it. It was worth the wait. MaXXXine. And so, as we said, Ty West, the director. Huge cast in this one. Obviously, Mia Goth reprising her role as MaXXXine. She's played multiple characters in this franchise, but predominantly she is MaXXXine from X. We got Giancarlo Esposito in this one. We got Kevin Bacon. We got Halsey, we got Elizabeth Debicki, we got, the list goes on and on and on. A huge cast in this one, and a lot of star power, and it showed. We'll start with the good. Acting.
I agree. The acting was phenomenal. Of course, I've just caught up on the previous movies before. Mm-hmm. She was fantastic throughout the entire trilogy.
Oh, for sure.
The whole time, and this one... in particular, she really showed kind of like a more like vibrant or like I would say like more outgoing, brute kind of personality with MaXXXine's character, especially after the events of X.
Yep.
And it was done thoroughly. And of course, everybody else, their performances were great, especially Halsey's as well. Mm-hmm. I, in particular, really liked her character.
For sure. There's no question that Mia Goth is a movie star. Especially after this movie.
Yeah.
No, she reiterates it in the mirror one more time for us, but she is. Especially when it comes to this trilogy. And, the only other movie I've seen her in other than these three movies is Infinity Pool. And I didn't love that movie, but there's no doubt that she can act. And she showcases it once again here. She is the standout. And she has been this entire trilogy. Mm-hmm. Making a name for herself for sure. Another thing that this movie did really well is captured the 80s aesthetic vibe. I use that word aesthetic a lot, especially when it comes to, capturing the old times. And this movie not only captured it, felt like a movie made in the 80s.
Yeah, it did. It perfect the entire time just because, like how I kind of pointed out when we first saw the movie, we saw the clip of MaXXXine's character in 1959, and then... X took place in 1979. I was like, her character's got to be like, I thought originally when seeing X, I was like, she has to be like in her early 20s, mid 20s, it looks like. But then we have that first scene where she's just like, I'm reaching 33 and pointing out how like media's skyrocketing. Yeah. And the show business skyrocketing in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And they just encaptured everything so well from like all the sets.
The set design was so good.
And the video store in particular, how they have like a homemade section too. Yeah. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, the set design was a big part in capturing that aesthetic. Obviously, when we're in the studio part of things, you get to see the Bates Motel, you get to see some of the buildings, like you get to see some of the set designs for the movie that's inside of this movie, which is, the movie she's starring in, Puritan 2. But outside of that, they made 80s Hollywood look amazing. Like you said, the video store was awesome. All the VHS tapes, the variety of the tapes you see, are from that time period. So well done. To the apartment, to the agent's house, to the house on the hilltops up in the Hollywood sign. Everything set design-wise was done really good. And if you watch her walk down the street in Hollywood, too, the windows are all decorated, look really, they capture, again, the 80s essence. And whether it's a war store or it's another video store or it's an adult magazine store, all of it looked really good.
Yeah, and like the entertainment store, how they have like the CRTs in the window, and even though the store's closed, those CRTs are still running, and they're running the news, because if you have like an appliance store like that today, they're shutting everything off.
Yeah.
As for that part of the crew, when they're closing there, they're like, just leave the front displays.
Yeah.
Just leave them on.
Show the news.
Yeah, while you're walking down the street too, you can see that as well. And kind of like people's personalities, I would say.
Yep.
They're more vibrant as for the 80s, because like there's not that many, I would say, like regulations or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like her friend from the video store, I forget his name. What was it?
Oh, what was his name? It was Leon.
Leon, yeah. How
Leon.
he's carrying around that huge knife. And
Yeah.
it's part of his personality.
And, you know, this movie, when you watch a trailer, you think the Night Stalker's playing a bigger role in this movie than he actually does. It didn't disappoint me, though. I was kind of excited to see that story coincide, but it made sense in how they connected it, in the sense that, like, she has somebody stalking her, and he's mimicking the Night Stalker to take the heat off of him. I liked that. But, you know, when all of that was going on, and, you know, you watch the documentaries and all of that, the hysteria that was going on in Southern California was depicted in this movie really well. Everybody had knives. People were locking their doors first and foremost as soon as they enter the house. You rarely saw people walking alone. In this movie, we had a little interaction with a little nut squash, too, which was very unexpected, but very well done. No, they captured this time and what Southern California was going through with the Night Stalker really well. Another way, you know, you mentioned it with the people and the bystanders and, you know, how they acted. Costume was also done really well. And the soundtrack also captured
The soundtrack.
early to mid-'80s really, really well.
Like I've mentioned in previous episodes, I love movie soundtracks. Love those, love the score and everything. And this movie, and I kind of love as well movies like this where they have like actual artists, and it's not just dedicated music made for like the movie to be played in the background. But this one had a phenomenal soundtrack, and including music that's playing around in the background. Like one thing that I pointed out that I really loved was I almost recognized it when the club scene.
Yeah.
Where as soon as heard the first couple beats, I was just like, that's Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Which fits in perfect with the movie, of course, because Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that as well, because they've had so many of their songs played throughout a lot of movies, like Black Mirror Bandersnatch. That's where I first heard it. And that song...
That's the song you selected.
Yeah.
I selected Thompson Twins, Hold Me Now. Just to go back where you can select
see,
the
that's
movie.
where I got those. That's where I got those songs from, because those are great too.
Yeah.
But that song's a staple of that movie, and then hearing it in this one as well. And they picked, of course, the best album, the best song to kind of go with it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, because like it's just full of sin. You just see like everybody in there, like just of course either getting high, getting drunk, or they're with somebody else doing something.
Yeah.
So it was perfectly fit, and all the songs playing throughout the movie could have been better. Top-notch stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they started it with a bang, and then they ended it with a bang. I loved the ending being the end song and the credits rolling into Betty Davis Eyes. It was a great pick. But not even just the soundtrack. Obviously, we get a lot of great songs that are very recognizable, especially for the time. The soundtrack or the score that plays behind it is very synthy, very poppy, very 80s as well. So even when you're not getting that commercialized music, you're getting a score that matches the vibe, the aesthetic of this movie. And, you know, they also didn't hold back on the drug use of the 80s. You see a lot of cocaine. You see a lot of drug use in general. You see alcoholism. And, you know, it's Hollywood. It's Hollywood in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I think Ty West did a great job in his direction in capturing the essence of the 80s once again and concluding the story.
I agree, and kind of touching back on like the drug use thing, we see like a development of the drug use of Maxine's character. Like in X, of course, she's taking, you know, some sugar booger.
Yeah.
But she's doing that, and in that movie she's being told, you know, you're gonna get hooked on it and then you're just gonna have a constant supply, and she's like, no, I'm not. To where now in her dressing room there's like, what is it, a duck?
It's like a cookie jar.
Yeah, it's like a duck, it's a duck cookie jar that's just full of blow.
Yeah, just loaded.
Yeah, and she's doing it at every time.
Yeah.
But in that sense, too, that kind of segues now for me, like, the suspense, like you said, of the movie as well. Because after she takes, like, a hit of that, she's reviewing her script. And you can kind of tell that something's going to happen by how aggressive she is highlighting stuff in her script, and it just keeps getting more and more aggressive with the video store killing happening at the same time.
Yeah, I like that. Again, it goes back to the direction from Ty West. I think he's done a great job with this entire trilogy in his direction. I think this was his best directed movie, though, out of the three.
I would agree.
I think, in general, this was the best story we got of the three, and I enjoyed the first two movies. I liked X a little more than Pearl, but this is, I put this at top. But the story we get in this one is also really good in the sense that she's being hunted down by somebody that knows her, her demons, her sins, and it's really eating at her as she's trying to make her big break and reach her end goal. And I agree, the aggressive marker, while that's happening, is just another way to showcase, that something tense is about to happen. I thought it was just a great scene, very worthy of pointing out for sure. Just in general, the story was really well done. I loved Kevin Bacon as the detective. I love the interactions we get with him. The chase scene is hilarious. There's not a lot of comedy in this movie.
Yeah.
But that chase scene when you see him running,
it felt like a cartoon.
Yeah.
Honestly, I even said to myself, I was just like, what is this cartoon ass run? Like, is this Looney Tunes or something? Yeah. Where they're just in that set and they're just running up the hill, and I was like, this looks goofy. Yeah. But you know what? It fits.
Yeah. Speaking of Kevin Bacon, I think the scene where he reaches his demise, the scenes collectively are amazing. You get the club scene, where you were talking about, you really feel the music. That's Frank Goes to Hollywood. And he thinks he has her in the bathroom. The window's open. He goes out. And that's where you get the heads up, bro, baseball bat to the head. Mm-hmm. And then he wakes up and his car's in the junkyard underneath.
when they do the baseball scene, I don't know if it was just me, but it kind of gave a feel from the Warriors.
Yeah,
almost. It kind of did.
It did.
When I got that, I was like, it feels very similar to that.
Yeah.
And then of course the car being crushed scene, just the fact that how quick he folds, of course, because he's gonna die, and he's just praying to God and please help me. Yeah. And a scene that kind of disturbed me from that wasn't even the killing or that. Was the fact that the bodyguard let his dogs go
and just eat,
and they started licking up the blood and the remains that are oozing out of the car. I was like, ugh.
Yeah,
that's not what that is not Purina dog chow. That is not, no.
That's not grade A. But no, it was a great scene. Everything looked good. Giancarlo Esposito, he's a badass in this movie. I love him as the agent.
As soon as he came up, I immediately as soon as he came up, I immediately said to myself, anytime I see him come up in anything, I'm like, Gustavo Fring!
He's always a supporting character, but he's always the best supporting character.
Yeah, he's just on the verge of being a main character.
Yeah.
And he's, like you said, the best supporting one, and he plays his roles so well and so memorable, of course, from Breaking Bad and what he's currently in right now that's airing The Boys in the 4th season. He's Stan Edgar, and he is a menace in that series with his presence, and he kind of carried that into this as well, because, I mean, how you said, he shows up there, and when we see him in the one meeting, he's just on a bike, working out, taking a phone call, and then the next thing we see, they're arranging this guy's death.
Also, that office scene, not to cut you off, when he's on the bike, that outfit and that office was pure 80s as well, if we're going to continue talking about the set design.
Yeah. I mean, he's full, nowadays.
Sweatsuit.
Yeah, when people are working out now, it's minimal clothing as much. As for then, he's looking like he's ready to hang out in his living room during the winter. Yeah. But instead, he's on this bike, he's got this headset, and he's taking a phone call.
Old ass headset.
Yeah, I know. And the fact that after he's told that, he's like, okay, I'm gonna handle it.
Yeah.
Arranges all this killing, and then after MaXXXine's like, oh my god, he's like, don't worry, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Still, his character, one of the best supporting characters.
He was a supporting character in Abigail as well, and he killed it. Continue with the twist. I did not expect, obviously, there's a spoiler alert on this, I did not expect the ending to come down to her versus her father and a religious battle. I thought that was a cool twist. I dug the ending a lot. There was one thing which I know we both can agree on, we'll get into in a minute. But the ending overall, I thought was good. It was almost perfect. Then they went a little too far, in my opinion. But I would still put the ending in the good, and the twist was a big part of that.
The twist, definitely, because how we were going throughout the movie, I even nudged to you, and I was thinking that, like, you know, when they have the big protests about the movie, and there's one distinctive protester that's big and jacked, and he's, like, wearing this, like, Doug Dimmadome style, like, cowboy hat the entire time. I'm like, I feel like he's the Night Stalker.
Yeah.
I feel like he is, because he's attacking, like, all of these people that are specifically, like, tied to this movie, or they're, like, auditioning for it as well, but just the twist in it being her father in the end, I just thought, oh my god, could not have predicted this at all.
It made a lot of sense, though, in the sense that, like, you know, obviously it comes full circle with him being very religious and the video we get at the beginning of the movie, but when you look back at, like, our interactions between this mysterious man that Kevin Bacon's basically chauffeuring and Mia Goth's character, MaXXXine, the scene where he's watching her dance at the showroom, and he, like, is really angry and, like, breaks the wood. It makes more sense if you're, like, watching your daughter do something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, why is this guy so mad? That's kind of like, I'd be like, wow, look at that. And he's over here, like, just, like, snapping the place in half. Like,
if I would have seen that, I would have been like, hey, man, I don't think this is for you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I could give you a refund, but I don't think you're cut for this.
Like, but it makes sense when you think about it full circle. Is there anything else in the good that really sticks out to you? I have one more thing, but it kind of is half and half, so we'll use that as a good way to move on. But
we touched on it, the video store killing, a little bit, but that is definitely a good for me in terms of the killing, just because, like, of how unique I would say that killing is in particular, with the cut on the back of the neck. Mm-hmm. That I have not seen in a movie for a very long time, or if at all. Yeah. So I thought that was unique. The front. Yeah. And the fact that, like, I mean, of course he could have gone through the front, because he, like, caught him by surprise from behind. He could have just easily reached over, got him by the throat, but instead he got his neck, and then just the huge gash down the eye really sold it.
I love the blood splatter on the VHS that we get from that scene.
And what I kind of said before we started was, I'm glad they chose to go with the home video section to display that, because with most manufactured VHS, of course, on that, like, inside, like, spine, you don't really have too many labels. It's kind of like just printed on the plastic. Yeah. As for the home videos, of course, it's big white blank labels. Yeah. And we got to see the blood on that.
It all just plays again into the cinematography. This movie was very well shot.
Yeah. And the 80s kind of more as well, like, some of the killings we see that the father does, like when we see him take those two girls that work with MaXXXine, just kind of seeing, like, they're shooting on Betamax. Yeah. And VHS is all around. And kind of, like, people's interests more for video store guy. He was wearing a Judas Priest shirt. Yeah. And he was wearing, specifically from the album, Scream for Vengeance, which is an amazing album. Yeah. And once he, like, leaves MaXXXine's apartment, this I kind of noticed where you can see his Walkman on his hip, and the audio, you can specifically hear the button, like, they made sure they got it, where you can hear the click of the play button, and that it's starting at a low volume, and you see his hand turn, and the volume within the movie, of course, gets louder, because it's kind of like, okay, we're listening from his ears now. The music's starting slow, or, like, kind of low, boosts it up, and then he just takes off. Yeah. So that would kind of honestly be it for me for the good. Yeah.
The segue I'm going to talk about actually pertains to the video store kill. You know, you and Corey talked to me after the movie, and it really made me think, like, you know, the effects on that kill weren't perfect, but they felt very 80s, and so you gotta like it because of that. But I do put the effects half and half, because we'll go to the men now. The head explosion on the dad. That's what I mean by they went too far with the ending. I think they could have ended it after, you know, the helicopter says, drop your weapon, and it just shoots to her in the TV interview. Yeah. And then it goes back, and that's when we see the head explosion, the divine intervention. I wasn't the biggest fan of that, and that's really the only knock I have on this movie.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said in the parking lot. If anything, how they kind of gave us too much at the end here, I wish they would have done that on Pearl. Okay. For Pearl, like, when Howard comes home, finds, like, the whole family dead and the rotting pig, and Pearl is just standing there going, I'm glad you came home. I want to know what his reaction was after finally talking to her. But in that movie, it gets cut off. As for here, if we would have just gotten her TV interview, movie cuts there, or to when she's on set and her like fake head, that's fine. But we did not need to revisit the scene.
I didn't like the ending on set.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. Yeah.
And I didn't really like that we revisit the scene like of her versus her dad, and then just kind of how cheesy it was, where I would say the practical effects and in terms of like her just going like, say it with me now, the quote that we've heard the entire movie.
I get it with... That connection is cool in the sense that it's connecting with the red carpet interview and that, but at the same time, maybe just jump to the movie, scene.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, I didn't love it, like that part of the ending, but overall I would say the ending was good. It just was a little bit too much there at the end.
And then the practical effect of the like headshot too.
That was the knock on the effects I have.
Yeah, which I was like telling Corey that like that's a sawed off point blank to his head and he's already hurt. When it showed off, it showed that the back of the head was still like intact.
Yeah.
There's no way that a sawed off is not gonna like completely like leave two solid holes in the ground at that range and that like there's gonna be part of the head still intact. No way. It's gonna splatter everywhere.
For sure. Was there anything else you had in the mix? That's really all I have.
The detectives.
Okay.
The detectives.
I liked the detectives.
I know you and Corey liked the detectives. I felt they were pointless and that, like, their jobs, they just did awful. Honestly.
I mean, but not pointless. I mean, they pushed the story with MaXXXine in, like, the sense that that's how she finds out her two friends were initially killed, and then the scene outside the video store. And then, honestly, if they're not there at the end at the pool, MaXXXine's getting branded.
Yeah, I guess just kind of their build up to the final was kind of, I would say, them saving MaXXXine was their best part. But other than that, then when they're chasing the father, they are dropping like flies.
Yeah.
He falls behind, he's done, behind the Hollywood sign. And then when, like, I forget her name, the female detective, but when she, like, comes out from her fight with, like, the father, she's got a cross in her eye, and then she tumbles.
Yeah.
I was like, my God.
Yeah.
Like, you both fell so easy. But what I also kind of, like, was left with a bad taste in my mouth from them was when they were bringing out her friend from the video store murder, and they see that she's standing right there, and they intentionally, like, oh, she's here, we really want her to understand the gravity of this situation, so what we're going to do is just show her friend's face.
Yeah.
And he's all dead.
And I get that's not ethically correct, but, I mean, maybe that's something they did to, like, get people to talk. I don't know.
Kind of like a wake-up call.
Obviously, we didn't get to live the 80s, but it seems like the rules were a little looser. So, maybe, there's some truth to that technique, but it is pretty messed up, I'll give you that. I don't have anything in the bad.
In the bad? No. I thought I did at first, but I kind of moved it into the meh.
Yeah.
So the bad, I don't really have anything, to be honest. Those were my only two with the meh.
Yeah.
And yeah, other than that, mostly good.
Yeah, so we'll hop over to our final thoughts and rating then. What do you want to leave off with MaXXXine, and what do you give it out of 10?
With MaXXXine final thoughts, of course, like I said last time, and like you're going to say, to go see this, of course, do your homework and watch X and Pearl before.
For sure.
In theatrical release. Like how you recommended to me.
Yeah.
Because I had a friend try telling me to do the opposite way. To watch Pearl and then watch X. Okay. And I was like, I don't know. I'm going to trust my movie friend, my movie friend expert to do that. And
you won't be spoiled on anything if you go chronologically, but I say go theatrical release because Pearl makes a little more sense, I feel like, if you have the background of X.
Yeah, and it's kind of more entertaining to, like, get you through is the fact that, like, when you watch X and then you get all that information and then you can finally connect those loose ends by watching Pearl, it's a more satisfying viewing experience.
For sure. Pearl is what I would call a prequel sequel. It takes place before the original movie, but I still think you need the original movie before it.
Yeah. Definitely to do that, and that this movie was definitely killer. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think it's probably up there for, like, the best movie of the year for me. Now, that's not saying a whole lot, because like I told you before, I've only seen 4 movies that had came out this year.
It's top 5 for me, brother, and I've seen 44 movies this year, so...
that should speak on it for itself. But those are my thoughts that I'm going to leave with MaXXXine on is catch up on the trilogy. Go watch it.
Yep. What do you give this bad boy out of 10?
I'm giving this 9.2.
9.2? I'm going to go 9.5.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit above. I mean, I really only have that one flaw. Some of the effects. The one I give a pass to because it did feel really 80s, and when you look back on it, that's cool. It is cool. But the head explosion and the ending kind of steering a little bit too long for me knocked it down to a 9.5. This is a phenomenal movie. It's the best of the trilogy. I definitely agree. Check out the first two, then go watch this one. I will say, again, I enjoy the first two movies, but this one, in my opinion, was leaps and bounds better than the first two.
For sure. It's definitely the best way to cap off an already fantastic trilogy.
Great conclusion, for sure.
Yeah.
And shout out to Ty West. Thank you for this fun, modern horror trilogy that feels retro. Thank you for that. Can't thank you enough to Ty West. But yeah, definitely go check it out and give it its just due. Buy a theater ticket and go check this one out on the big screen.
Can I give one shout out?
Yeah. Shout
out, Kurt, for the free medium blue raspberry icy. I love you. I hope you're seeing this.
That'll do it for MaXXXine. Mo, thank you, brother, for coming on again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for watching. If you like what you're watching, please check out some of these other videos. Hit the subscribe button or follow the social links down below. We're here all the time, so please let me know what you're thinking, and we will talk to you all soon. Peace.